helmets upright. Reach out and touch the sky. Boy, you with me, don't wait for nights. Going baptized, yes, spirit baptized. Going in and the helmets upright. Reach out and touch the sky. Boy, you with me, don't wait for nights. Going baptized, yes, spirit baptized.
Hey, welcome back to I'm Going In. I'm Todd Blyleven, your host, and today I'm absolutely honored to have another amazing guest. Brigadier General retired John Teichert is joining the I'm Going In podcast. John's a recently retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General and national security expert. I'm telling you, I got a good one here, everybody, with extensive leadership experience, including his role as Assistant Deputy Undersecretary of the Air Force for International Affairs, where he managed 240 billion security cooperation portfolios. He has served as the senior defense official and defense attaché to Iraq and is an accomplished F-15E combat pilot and F-22 test pilot, which is absolutely insane and really incredible. As the founder of Capital Leadership LLC, John's focusing on developing innovative leaders and fostering transformative leadership today. With degrees from MIT and Stanford, he has been featured in major media outlets and continues to inspire as a speaker and a writer, which we're going to talk about. But sir, it really is an incredible honor. I've been truly blessed to have incredible people coming on the I'm Going In and sharing their stories of strength and resilience. I'm just so honored to have you on. So thank you for being on I'm Going In.
Todd, the honor is all mine. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to the next several minutes.
Yes, sir. I am as well. And I know our guests or our audience is excited to hear your stories. So one thing that, a lot of my audience enjoys, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, when we bring on our first responders, our military veterans, whether current or former or retired, they always want to know, like, what was the sparking interest of making this lifelong decision to get into, whether it's the military, first responder duties, but what was yours? What was that moment when you decided, hey, you know what, I want to do this and I want to do it for a career?
Todd, absolutely. I grew up in a loving and patriotic home. My dad was in the National Park Service and the U.S. Coast Guard. And I went to my small theater in my small town in the northwest tip of the country as an 8th grade boy and watched Top Gun in 1986. And literally, it was at that moment that I said, that's what I want to do with my life. Which service has the newest, best planes? The F-15E Strike Eagle was the newest on the block. And I decided then and there that I wanted to serve my country in that way. And then I went to MIT for college and happened to first take my oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States alongside of another 17-year-old who is particularly attractive, who's now been my wife for 26 years. And we've served our country together. We've got 3 kids. All of them are or intending to serve our country. But it all started with watching Top Gun and growing up in that home that loved our country.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Now, what was your favorite part of Top Gun?
Yikes. I think all of it is awesome. Both 1 and 2, by the way. I just love good technology and brave Americans serving our country and serving our communities. And that movie, or those movies, just oozed with those depictions. And I just got fired up and said, hey, I want to be tough like those guys and gals. And sure enough, I had an opportunity to fly the F-15E Strike Eagle and the F-22 and some other things. But really, it has always been about support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I'm blessed to be able to do that alongside of my wife and my amazing kids. Amen
to that, brother. I mean, that's gives me chills and goosebumps, make me, red, white, and blue. I mean, it's just, it's an amazing, just how you articulate the movie Top Gun. I mean, a lot of us think about that motorcycle scene when he's, hair on fire and the planes flying over him and everything else. And then you talk about the dogfights and just learning about that. So I come from a military background as well. My mom's whole side was all military, Air Force pilots, Top Gun. My grandfather was a gunny in the Marine Corps for 25 years. My other grandfather was a naval bomb specialist. So my whole mom's side is all military, and it's been. I grew up a devil pup, loved putting the fatigues on as a kid. My dad obviously played in the big leagues in Major League Baseball, and so I grew up either at a stadium or I was on a hill somewhere dug in, pretending to be in some theater or combat like scenario, right? I chose baseball, which was an exciting venture for me. But a lot of my friends are first responders, have done really well for themselves, and have just loved every step of it. A lot of my friends are either current or former military, and it's just such an honor to speak to somebody that has so much passion, not only for our country, but also for what technology has done to really provide us the security that we have today. So
Well,
super
no,
awesome.
thanks, Todd. No, I appreciate that. I'm not even close to as cool as Tom Cruise. I drive a Honda Civic, not a motorcycle, which is pretty boring. But I do say that my oldest child just found out that she's going to be a pilot in the Air Force to carry on this 4-generation legacy in my family.
Wow.
And we couldn't be more proud that she's going to serve our country and follow in the footsteps of her dad and her mom.
So that's so amazing. Congratulations to you and your wife both, just for raising such amazing children. Being a parent is hard, especially when you talk about the higher you start to work through your whatever work experience you have. You get promoted, comes with more responsibilities, obviously, and then when you have a family on top of that, it's challenging not only to do your job or serve others in your workplace, but then also go home and be that dad. I know when my dad, growing up as a Major League Baseball player, was always grinding every single day to try to be his best. I remember the whole mentality of no stopping here, was in his mindset all the time. No stopping here. I've got to keep going because I got to continue to be my best because I have others behind me or I'm leading others, right? Working as a team. But then once he crossed that white line, and him and I just spoke about this the other day, that aggressiveness, that focus on attention to detail, and you cross that white line and you become the parent, become the dad, you become the everyday person that's picking weeds out in the front yard or whatever that is, right? So what was that challenge like for you, especially with as motivated as what you have been pretty much your entire life, with attending MIT and Stanford, and the expectations probably you had on you as a worker, right? As a servant to our military and everything else, but then also being a dad to 3 beautiful kids.
Yes, Todd, thanks for asking that. I started a process when I was about in my mid-30s, realizing that I wasn't doing the balance of my life very well, where I was more deliberate about sitting down and listing my priorities in life, which career, by the way, is number 5, and then having a process of feedback where I'm regularly assessing how am I doing in achieving goals against those priorities. And about every 2 to 3 weeks still, I go back and do that process to make sure that as I allocate my time, energy, attention, and passion, that I'm good at those 4 priorities that are ahead of my career, and I'm not neglecting my family or my faith or my friends or my country as I try to strive and pursue a career of excellence. And I think that process, while I always do it and never feel like I've nailed it, is helping me, based on the feedback loop, to be a lot better at aligning my life with my stated priorities than I would have been otherwise.
Wow. What an incredible podcast this is already. I'm taking a break right now because I'd love to share some news with you. As most of you know, I write poetry as part of my therapy, and it's been ongoing since the shooting in 2017. And I use that time to be able to relax, to refocus, to bring my heart rate down if I'm feeling any type of trauma come on. And so I've been writing over the years, and recently, over the last couple of years, some of my poetry have been transformed into songs. And one of the most recent songs that I've created is called A Soldier's Legacy. And I'm going to share a little bit with you. This is sung by an incredible artist named Todd Campbell. And we're working on this, so it's going to be launching here pretty soon. But I just wanted to share this because it's extremely relevant to my guest today, So please enjoy just a small little excerpt of this song. And I hope that you really enjoy it. Thank you. And then we'll get back to the show right after this.
It's the story of a young boy, his dreams so strong, clear. Be a soldier one day, fight with no fear. He'd wear his grandpa's old fatigues, wore them out with pride, and his old World War helmet, but it fit just right. With his grandpa's old rifle, he'd precise and take his aim. His daddy's old war vest shields him from the pain. He'd sip from the canteen, just like his dad Paul did. Yeah, back in the old days, it's where he pretended to live. From rifles to the past, the canteen don't mourn. The soldier's legacy forever reborn. Through battles fought and stories told, legacy lives on. Yeah, thank you for the soldier, for all that you passed on.
So well said. A lot of us struggle through that, right? I know when I got done playing professional baseball, I went through this year of depression trying to learn, what am I supposed to do? How do I redefine that success? Or you talk about today's military veterans that come out of the military that is so structured and routine driven, and you have a purpose. You have something you're trying to accomplish every single day or every minute, depending on probably where you're stationed and the position you have. But now all of a sudden you step into the real world of corporate America, or just trying to find a job. And how do you redefine that success? It's so difficult if you are not completely routine focused, right? So what was your challenge when you stepped out of that lifelong routine and then getting into speaking and all these things, as far as trying to find that success that you had from the military?
Yeah, Todd, I think that it started with the alignment according to those priorities that I mentioned. But I also got out not because I was running away from something, but because I was running towards something. And I would encourage anybody at a transition point to think about, what are they running towards? And for me, I firmly believe there was something more impactful I could do for my country and for people by getting out than staying in. It didn't mean that I was leaving the oath of support and defend the Constitution. In fact, at my retirement ceremony, I had my officiating officer administer that oath to me again, just as a signal that was something that I was going to continue to pursue in this next half of my life. But it wasn't going to be to the detriment of faith, family, and friends. It was going to continue to be mutually supportive as I blend my life together with multiple priorities and try to live a life of purpose outside of the military.
I love the phrase, I'm running to it instead of I'm running away from it. I think that's so key. A lot of us, we try to hold on. It took me a long time to try to define what that version of success meant to me. It took multiple areas of traumatic kind of downfall, different experiences where life slaps you in the face and you have this appreciation for what life is really all about, right? To understanding that you're not going to receive the same gratification of maybe striking out the side or the Gatorade being poured on you or whatever type of celebration through your maybe combat veterans or friends in the military or first responders or your business, where when you give that presentation, someone's not going to slap you on the butt and say, hey, great job. And you're not going to get the big rundown in the hallway. So you have to learn what that running to moment is and how to embrace the now new positives of that, right? And that's what you're kind of suggesting is you're not going to be able to leave the stuff behind. You want to take it with you as you're running towards this new venture in your life.
That's exactly right. And I think sometimes we glamorize the past and forget about
Yeah.
the struggles of being in that place. And now we're wondering, well, we're struggling now. The past was so glamorous. Is there a hope for my future? And I think a realistic assessment of the past, plus some dreams and hopes of things that you're striving toward in this stage of life, using all of those relationships, experiences, and backgrounds that you've accumulated along the way, actually give all of us a chance to have more significance in the second half of our life than even we had with the joy in the first half of our life.
Amen to that. What, this is very conversational. So just so all the audience knows, you and I had a chance to meet each other for about 10 minutes prior to this recording. And we talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about. But in essence, was during your campaign, as a pilot, I mean, gosh, you got a chance to fly the F-15 and the F-22, which is incredible, right? But during your campaign, was there ever a moment, I'm sure there must have been, but a moment that sticks out where you felt defeated, you felt knocked down, whether it was something on you or something with others, and then that moment of rise, the moment you decided, you know what, I'm going in for this. I'm going in it for myself, or I'm going in for others. Can you kind of maybe just share with us something in that moment of knockdown and how you were able to stand back up?
Absolutely, Todd. And again, thank you so much for having a podcast like this that really focuses on these types of stories to uplift and provide sources of resilience to your viewers and your listeners. Let me give an overarching thought, and then I'll give you some specifics and dive into details as much as you want.
Let's go.
There are about 6 or 7 dates on my calendar that recur every year of bad things that happen in my life. And those include deaths, those include major setbacks. And I have them as annual reminders, as things that I call stones of remembrance. And that's a biblical phrase that comes from when the Israelites wandered for 40 years in the desert. And then as they crossed across the Jordan River, Joshua leading them, he directed them to pick up stones and build a memorial in the promised land. And that memorial helped them, 1, remember that they survived those tough times, and 2, that they were now blessed and benefited by being in the promised land. And I use those dates on my calendar, Todd, as remembrances that while things seemed really bad at a moment, now time heals all wounds, or most wounds, or certainly makes things seem a lot better than they were at the moment. And some successes directly result from those things that seemed like failures. And so when I come across the death of a colleague in one of those stones of remembrance, or a really bad time in my life, it helps me remember that I got through it, which means that the next time that I face something bad, that I'm going to get through it as well. And I'm happy to talk about as many of the examples of those as you want, but certainly that's a philosophy that I have used to keep me positive and hopeful even when I get knocked down.
Awesome. I love the stones of remembrance. I have a visual of that in my mind, of something that I have personally that's very similar to that. So awesome. Yes, please. Let's explore on some of those life circumstances that you can share just your wisdom and knowledge to, please.
Absolutely. On the 25th of March, 2009, I was the director of operation of the F-22 test squadron in the United States Air Force, and we had a fatal crash. And we lost an F-22, and we lost a hero of mine, Dave Cools Cooley. And every year on that date, there's a reminder that pops up. And I use that for the reasons I talked about, but also so I can reach out to some other people and just make sure people are doing okay. But it was such a heart-wrenching, difficult circumstance. And I vividly remember in my mind some pictures and some conversations that I had during the months-long recovery from that moment. And then I fleeted up shortly after that to be the squadron commander in that same organization. And I had a conversation with my new boss at the time, and he sat me down and said, Dragon, that's my call sign, Dragon. I've had it since 1998. He said, you're not the guy. And he went on to explain that I was part of this organization that had the crash, and it would be better to start over with somebody not with me in charge. And I said, well, sir, it sounds like you're firing me. And he said, no, I'm kind of stuck with you. I just wanted you to know that you're not the guy. And I said, okay, got it. And I went about my day and I went back to my unit of about 600 people, and we continued to recover and we continued to heal. And then over the course of the next 2 years, it was a rocky time with that particular boss. And there was a lot of recovering to be done after we lost that $200 million aircraft, but most importantly, the priceless fellow test pilot named Cools. And I remember vividly, Todd, at the end of those 2 years, winning some large-scale team award as the best test team in the country. And I remember driving home from that day weeping because I knew how tough it was. But I also realized that the reason we were able to emerge from the challenges and succeed in spite of the challenges is because we did it together, because we relied upon one another. And actually, the fringe benefit to all of it, in addition to some fancy piece of hardware that I can keep on my shelf, is that I realized at that moment that my career was over. I thought that it was terminal, and I might as well just be the selfless leader that I knew that I could be without regard to career progression, because it wasn't going to happen. I happened to get promoted early out of that position. That was somewhat miraculous. But to me, it's a great reminder that we got through those tough times after the 25th of March, 2009, together as a team. Time did heal some of those wounds. It opened some doors of opportunity that maybe never would have been open otherwise. And it's important every year to remember on that date all of those things that I just described, because I think it puts life in perspective. And the challenges that we face today, while they seem insurmountable, will lessen over time and maybe even open up doors of opportunity.
Well, thank you, sir, for sharing that amazing information. And God bless all of our people in the military, our first responders, anybody that's willing to step forward and do something to help someone else in need, or challenge the daily grind of adversity and technology to provide those tools to help others keep us safe. But I when I think of like trauma, right, and you think about the experiences, the knockdown moments, sometimes based on our own coping skills, on what we're taught, whether it's, we're not all in the military, we're not all first responders, we don't go through training on how to kind of prepare ourselves for mass casualties or anything else in life, or just that simple car crash that happens and mentally you get distraught or whatever that may be. But I think about trauma being this sphere, right? These bad moments that happen in our lives. I bubble them up into this metal sphere that's hovering out in front of us, right? And the whole goal is to keep that sphere of trauma, whatever those memories are, the rocks of resilience, whatever that is, out in front of us. But it's how do we learn through our course of time, our walkthrough, in the case that you just described, where you have this horrible thing happen back in 2009, I believe you said, in March, and how that offset everybody, right? It takes you off your game. It allows you to appreciate life. It puts you in a place that you're not unfamiliar with, or maybe you don't want to be in anymore. And so you're trying to fight to get this fear of trauma that's sitting on your doorstep right now, or it's on your shoulder. It's kicking you in the back of the skull. You have your nightmares. You have your headaches. You have your speech that's somewhat impeded. For me, that's the way I felt when I got back from Las Vegas during the mass shooting. And right after that, I'm trying to rely on my coping skills, on what I've learned through my life, on how to navigate through these challenges of all the dark demons that I'm seeing in my mind, right? I'm relying hard on my faith. Please lift me up, do whatever I can. I've got amazing people, combat veterans to first responders, everybody reaching out, sharing relatable stories. Similar as to your experience. You're building this team. We're together. You're trying to build this support system around everybody so they're all in the same fight together as they move forward to a common goal, right? And the common goal is to make sure that we're taking this fear, getting it away from our bodies, learning our own resilience, our own strength, how to navigate through all the challenges that we're about to come through with this newfound trauma out in front of us, right? So where I'm going with this is, as you start to build on this story, I'm constantly seeing this sphere of yours kind of move out in front of you now, in this comfortable place where now you can navigate through life. You can go and accomplish those goals, but you didn't just do it as a single person. You did it as a team, and everybody's trauma spheres were out in front of them, and you're able to accomplish this, which then I think that's why the sweet victory of it, where you cry, you break down, the exhaustion part of like, oh my God, we did this. We did it. The celebration and everything is so beautiful because you're able to keep this out here. So keeping that in mind, as you started that journey of resilience and you started to really kind of push that thing out, what were some of the key tactics that you used personally to then start that perseverance and get it out to that moment where that success just meant so much to you?
Todd, the Air Force and I think the DoD talks about 4 pillars of resilience: physical, mental, social, and spiritual. And the idea is that we all have these 4 pillars. And the idea is that those are the things, when we get knocked down, that we need to be able to rely upon in order to move that sphere out so that it just doesn't dominate our life. And the idea, I think, is that you're supposed to build up those pillars intentionally so that they're already there when we face the inevitable challenges of life. No one goes through life unscathed. We all do get knocked down, regardless of your career, your profession, where you live in the world, whether it's today or 1000 BC. There are major challenges that we all face. And in the midst of a crisis is not the time to start building those pillars up. The time to do so is in peacetime, when you're not facing those challenges. And now you have a chance to build those things up so that there is something strong and tangible to rely upon when you do get knocked down. But I actually think there's something missing from those big 4, because I think that sometimes people feel too much of an individual personal burden, that if for some reason they get into a tough spot and they haven't built those pillars up, that now to some extent it's their fault, and now it just devolves. And I think that there is a societal or communal part of building a web of resilience using those factors, so that then when someone's tank is empty or their well is dry, now we see what's going on and have built the structures to surround them, so that even if their own personal pillars of resilience are not there, then now we have this safety net that helps them out. And I think that because in that particular case with Cools and the F-22, we had this 600-person team that really was already remarkable, that when I was feeling like I didn't have any gas in my tank and my pillars had eroded completely, there were other people there that knew me well enough, that cared about me, that were there to lift me up. And that reminds me, and should remind us, that while we should individually build up those pillars, that it's also our responsibility to keep a lookout for our battle buddy or our neighbor or our church member or a colleague or a friend or a classmate, so that we have built a network of resilience that can help lift them up when they don't have an ability to stand up on their own.
That was so awesome. I mean, I think about, our police, right? So you look at military, you look at this isn't just about first responders. I mean, you look at teachers, you look at community of people that experience a traumatic event, sometimes together, sometimes individually, but that individual trauma that they're experiencing, whether it's in the workplace or in life, there's someone else that has a relatable experience to that. And a lot of times, if it's like, say, a teacher, for example, or a firefighter, firefighters go into a unfortunate scene together in a unit of 5 mostly, and they experience that together, unfortunately, but then they come back out of that and they debrief themselves, they go through that trauma that they experienced together as a team, right? And I think the one area, probably nurses, as well that are on the front lines experience a lot of this by themselves, right? The police, they go on a call, they experience something traumatic, they're knocked down, they get called to another call, they're forced to be resilient time and time again. And there's no real opportunity for them to reach out because of their job is maybe on the line. They're put into some other category as not mentally well, whatever that is. There goes their livelihood. Military is probably the exact same. I've heard it over and over. I can't trust my chain of command. I can't reach out. I can't express that I'm hurt on the inside. So to your point is so key, where we need to focus more in these sectors, in our medical fields, our first responders, our teachers, those that are dealing with things on a daily basis, to provide them with the pillars early. So when that traumatic event happens, and we're not talking about the loss of life in this moment, it could be for sure, but when that traumatic event happens, you have your tools in your tool belt. You're weaponized. You've got your armor on. And then to have this web of support that recognizes, hey, John, like, you're having a bad day, man. Like, what's going on? Talk to me. And that's okay. That's the hardest part to I think relate to people or get people to understand that it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help, to say, hey, I am not right now. I've got way too much going on. My family life is interfering with my thought process here in this particular moment. I need to be able to talk to somebody or just have a coffee with someone so I can just take a break, right? But the way you just illustrated all of that with the 4 pillars and the web is so key, because it's so important for us to be somewhat weaponized or armored before we step into a traumatic event, right?
It is. And I think that it is true that it is a sign of strength to ask for help, not a sign of weakness.
Right.
Because we all do have times where we're low and we're beat down or we're knocked down and we don't know how to get up on our own. And it is a sign of strength, instead of just withering away there in a helpless state, to reach out to people and ask for help. And I think in our society, there is an epidemic of despair because there's an epidemic of loneliness. And we all walk into our homes and we don't know our neighbors, and we don't ask the tough questions with our colleagues at work. And people go into apartment complexes here in Washington, D.C. with stars in their eyes as if they're going to change the world, and they're beat down and they don't have a friend in the world. Yeah. And how are we expected then to be able to move forward if we don't have people that are in a network of connectivity that are there to lift us up, or we're there to lift them up? I came across a lady named Amy Wolf several years ago. She lives in Newberg, Oregon. There was an article written about something she did in the Wall Street Journal where she recognized a whole lot of problems with mental health of students in her town. And she did something really simple. She made up a bunch of signs. Maybe your audience has seen some of these signs that say things like, you're loved, you matter, don't give up. Super simple idea. And then started finding ways to give those away at cost. And now around the country and around the world, there are hundreds and thousands of those signs that are just trying to chip away at this loneliness problem that we have by reminding people that there are others out there that are standing by to provide support, even if you don't have a network of your own. That society is our own network. Our community is our network. And it's not just your responsibility to build one of those networks. It's our responsibility as a society to do so. And that means that with signs in our yards, or with friendliness on our faces, or warmth in our handshakes, we are telling people that you matter and don't give up by the nature of how we carry ourselves and interact with other people in our community.
It's so amazing. Nobody wants to fail in their life. Nobody wants to be left alone. We all want to smile. We all want to love. And we can all be tough. We all do these things in our life where I talk about this. We check our tough box off, right? You've checked your tough box off. we've all survived the COVIDs. We've all survived being knocked down in our lives. You've already checked that off. So now embrace it, right? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I need some help. Let me share this story with you, because in our nature, people really do want to listen, and we really do want to help. We don't want to keep pushing people down. And I think it starts with our senior leadership in no matter what industry you're in. We need to have more empathy within our workplace. We need to stop siphoning people and allow people to actually talk and spread innovation and creativity, because especially with our younger generations, they're so creative. Let's not put that aside because of our own fear that we don't understand what they're talking about. Let's allow them to educate us. And in doing that, we've powerized ourselves with more knowledge and more leadership skills and being more commanding in terms of providing those opportunities for more love. I talk to people all over the world just like you do, and I'm not sharing anything that you don't know, because we're going to get into your books here in a second. But I talk to a lot of different leaders in the space of wellness, of leadership, CEOs, all kinds of different executives. And the culture, the shift is starting to shift the paradigm of, it's not all about me, me, me. It's now becoming more about you, you, you. And there's more servants out there trying to provide goodness as a team, and finding that I can be happy as an individual if I just open myself up and allow others to learn from me and for me to learn from them. So I love where you're going with it. I think it's absolutely amazing. We've touched on some amazing, amazing topics.
Well, let me just jump in quickly to a leadership thought that dovetails to exactly, Todd, what you just said, that leaders need to understand that the workers in their organization are not robots. We're not algorithms. We are human beings that have fears, dreams, desires, concerns, hopes, failures, that we've got those orbs that you talked about earlier that have been a part of our past. But if leaders look to their employees, their team members, as holistic people that have family, friends, and those others' hopes, dreams, desires, and fears, then now we can treat people as holistic human beings, not just as a peg in a hole that allows our organization to move forward. And when you create that type of culture as a leader, then now you unlock the natural talent and the humanity that exists within your team. And you find out that not only do you have a more harmonious workforce, but you have a better, more effective workforce at the same time. But it starts with realizing that your people are not robots, your people are humans. And that means they've got this holistic nature about them that needs to be nurtured and cultivated by a leader in the organization.
Yeah, you have to humanize yourself, right, first, before you attempt to humanize others. And that's hard. That's challenging for those of us that have worked really hard to get ourselves into a position of leadership, right? But that's the beauty part of it, is if you can transform yourself into that mindset where I need to be human. I did a speaking engagement, and I was talking about how there was a company that I worked for that had 5 incredible human beings as leaders, right? They do all kinds of things for the community. They're approachable. But in this one given moment during our annual meeting, they sat themselves up on high pillar type chairs, up on a stage where everybody's looking up at them. And we had to ask questions to them like they were the all-knowing and everything. And it was just a weird feeling, right? They dehumanized themselves. They made themselves unapproachable. And it was a very, very awkward kind of hour-long deal where I think they started asking themselves questions to spark conversation, right? Why not put yourself on that same level playing field? Roll your sleeves up like they did in the old days, right? Where they're not afraid to get on the line and show themselves in terms of the physical part. Now, mentally, we've come a long way, but I love where you went with the humanization of things, because we have to be able to show that we're human too. It's you flying that F-22 that's going to give you the credibility in any probably military room that you walk into. It's the stars you have on your chest, right? All of that, those are accolades. You've proven yourself on the battlefield and all these other places. You're it. I'm going to give you respect because of that. But man, you're going to win my heart if you start talking about love and feelings and how you're going to help me succeed. Right?
Well, there's another epidemic, Todd, that goes exactly to this idea. Gallup just did a poll and assessed that there is $8.8 trillion of lost productivity on the planet because of employee disengagement. And I think it goes back to what you just said, where if a leader isn't capturing hearts in addition to just proving their credibility, or even worse, their superiority, then now their employees are going to start disengaging. And that means that society is losing out on trillions of dollars of productivity because workers just feel like they are treated like a robot instead of like a human being. The Air Force Top Gun is called the Weapons School, and they have a 3-word motto: humble, approachable, and credible. And we think a lot about credibility as that's what matters. I'm a leader. People need to see me as credible. But if you're not humble, that you're never going to learn. If you're not approachable, no one's going to learn from you. And you need all 3 of those if you're going to capture hearts and minds and make the type of impact that engages your team, so that now you are learning together, you are growing together, you're helping people become the best possible version of yourselves, you're innovating together. But it starts with not just credibility, but humility and approachability as well.
Such a great point. Yeah, you have to be able to be approachable. You got to understand your own humility and vulnerability, right? In order to foster that innovation, that humanization, the love that you want from somebody. We want people to succeed, right? We do all this for our family. We do all this for our country. We do all this for our faith. We do all this for our own interpersonal successful moments because we want to feel good about ourselves when we go to sleep. But in the end, especially as we get older, we start to think about, how can I help? How can I then now provide the guidance that maybe you don't have to take 10 minutes to get through this challenge because I've already done that. So, but if I'm not approachable to it, they're never going to accept my offering, right?
Nope.
Yeah, it's the same as I relay this to faith. If you want a relationship with God, then have a relationship with God. It doesn't have to be challenging. You can have that relationship. You can understand how connected you can or don't want to be. It's not easy, and you have to fight through it every day. But if you open up your heart and you live with love and peace and harmony and provide that approachability factor in your life, you can achieve it. I know I'm connected. I know where I'm going, and I know that one day my wings will spread. I'm okay with that because that's how I live my life every single day. But we need more people like that, right? That's why I think just talking to you and hearing how you articulate this is so amazing to me. So thank you for sharing all of this vulnerability.
No, Todd, I'm so blessed. This has been fun, and truly, we all are walking through life together.
Yeah.
And life isn't a solo sport. Leadership is not a solo sport. That we are a community in whatever way you decide to fit together with other people. And it includes my neighbors, and it includes my colleagues and classmates and church members and other things. But we've got to look at life not just as I'm Superman and I put on my cape and swoop down and save the day, but we are all doing this lockstep together. And life is so much more productive, but more importantly, rewarding when you realize that you're doing it together and you're not doing it as a solo sport.
Yes, sir. All right. I want to get into some of these incredible books that you have published. You just published a book called Prayers for a Nation, and you also have an Amazon bestseller labeled Boom. So let's talk about Boom first, because I want to lead up into your latest book here. But what inspired you to write this? I mean, and obviously there's been these excerpts and probably images that have flashed up on the screen throughout our conversation for those that are watching. But for those that are listening, give us a brief background as to what sparked you to start writing about this and what's been your journey like as an author.
Todd, I started speaking about it, and I do a lot of keynote speaking, and I certainly am open to other opportunities to do that. Yeah. But I realized that a way to capture for a broader audience the types of thoughts about leadership, innovation, and resilience that I speak about is to put it down on paper. And everyone's got a story. every one of the members of your audience have a story. And this particular story, Boom, Leadership That Breaks Barriers, Challenges Convention, and Ignites Innovation, is a story about how when I showed up to command Edwards Air Force Base, our test base in the Mojave Desert, where Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier in 1947, and all of our aerospace firsts have had a nexus there ever since. But when I showed up in July of 2018, it was a bureaucratic mess. And we fundamentally changed the culture in about 6 months, such that we had more innovation activity at that 11,000 person base than the rest of the Air Force combined. And it's a story about leadership and cultural change that anybody can undertake, with a lot of flying and Chuck Yeager stories thrown in the mix, so that your listeners and others who pick up that book can make the same type of impact that we saw in a revolutionary way at the place that I call the center of the aerospace testing universe.
So amazing. I just love the image too. I mean, how can you get a better image than that right there? Yeah, John Dragon. Now, where'd the call name? Is it called call sign or?
It's a call sign, and you
sign.
get it in your first operational squadron.
Okay.
Typically, it's based on something stupid you did, but it has to sound cool. And I don't tell the full story, but it has to do with Zaragoza, Spain, and nuclear weapons. And no doubt Dragon is cool, but it truly is based on something stupid that I did.
Well, yeah, Dragon has got to be one of the best call signs probably ever. Yeah, so cool. So, and then now let's get into Prayers for a Nation. Where did this, spark and talk about this? You just launched this book a couple weeks ago.
I did, and I started a ministry back in early 2013 that was encouraging Christians to pray for our nation and our leaders. I had realized as I was doing some annual assessment that I was concerned about the direction of our nation, and I had a daily prayer life, but I wasn't focused on daily praying for our nation. And I started doing so and realized that maybe other people could use a little bit of prompting to do so. And so I have 750 or so blogs over the course of those 11 and a half years. Prayatlunch.us is the website for that. And I realized, especially with an election coming up and people even more concerned now about the direction of our nation than they were back in 2013, that I should compile a devotional. It's a 90-day devotional on how to pray for our country. And Todd, here's an idea that maybe is the crux of what this book, this devotional is all about. I have a really good friend who's a pastor, a former pastor of mine, and he tells a story about a friend of his who was a missionary in South Korea, that in a conversation between the two of them said that he had been praying for my pastor daily. And my pastor was blown away and said, wait a second, you are so busy. How can you take time to pray daily for me? And this missionary said, how can I say I love you and not pray for you? How can we say we love somebody and not pray for them? And it's the same thing with our country. How can we say we love our country and not faithfully pray for her and pray for our leaders? And this is a 90-day devotional with stories and history, Bible-based, that just encourages and helps people to understand how should we be praying for our country for such a time as this.
Such an amazing book. It really is. I think as Christians, regardless of whoever you're voting for, right? Whatever side you're on, we need to be more focused on being on one side, our nation, and praying for those leaders to have the guidance, not only mentally, but spiritually, to lead with positivity and love and be human, right? I firmly believe that we need more of that. And it's starting to shift. I'm seeing more of it on a world level. Unfortunately, it's taking horrible incidences and horrible circumstances in mass media to promote this feeling. But as Christians, we need to make sure that we're standing strong. We're being human. We're being the lions and the angels that are called upon to lead by example. And
you're right. And it's especially important, Todd, that the other political side, regardless of where you stand, they're not the enemy. They are fellow citizens. And we need to be faithful about supporting our community But then regardless of political party, we should be aligned with love of country and praying for our country and praying for leaders, whether we like them or not, that ultimately we need to get back to a basis and a foundation that is so perfectly embodied in the Constitution of the United States and the principles that underlie it, that give us a level of unity, which doesn't just mean that we know how to agree, but we know how to disagree well, that can enable us to solve the real problems that exist in our society in a productive way.
It so well said, and it comes back to us making sure that we're not just thinking about ourselves every day. Think about the soldier that's wearing the patch on his or her sleeve, that's lacing up the helmet, that's strapping up the boots to go out and do something that most people in the world would never, ever have the courage enough to take the step forward. And they're going out and doing that for us, right? Our first responders that are getting out of their vehicles to go check up on a car, with each step walking towards that vehicle, not knowing if it's going to be their last. We have to have more empathy for those that are putting their lives out at risk. Our EMTs, our nurses, our teachers, our educators, our leadership, our business leaders, right? Everybody goes to work to try to do the best job they can. But we also have to make sure that we're recognizing those fears that people have, show empathy, show more love, show more guidance where we can, and don't be afraid to raise our hand and say, hey, I need to slow down a second. I need some help. I talk about this a little bit. Now, I know we're getting ready to wrap up, and I want to give you your final talking points because it's been absolutely amazing speaking with you. But I always envision kind of this society where the CEO of a company just starts to foster ideas on how to work with their starting staff, their new employees, maybe an employee that's been there even for a while, but there's been communication issues, there's been some innovation issues, there's some bad blood here and there, to be able to go into that person's office freely and say, hey, let's grab a coffee. Let's get away from work. Let's just go humanize ourselves. Let's go out. I want to learn more about you as a father. I've got kids. They're on a little league team. I heard you're a baseball coach, whatever that connection is, right? But foster some form of a communication that allows the next conversation that's had to be meant more with friendship and kindness. There's still, again, the label of this is the boss, this is the employee, but we got to be able to put ourselves on this level of approachability, right? Because that fosters the resilience. It gives us the opportunity to have strength, have a voice, show love, and walk with pride all the way across. So I pray for this world every day. I pray for our country, pray for leaders, pray for people like yourself to make good decisions based on not just yourself, but others involved. So,
well, Todd, you are doing so much good by having a podcast like this, and I just appreciate you and being humble and approachable and telling your story of challenges and those things where you felt knocked down, but yet you're getting up. And I just think, especially to military and first responder communities, but frankly, to all of society, we need to help them to understand these types of tools that can help them overcome this crisis of despair and crisis of loneliness that is so plaguing our society today.
Sir, it has been an absolute honor getting just a chance to meet you, listen to you. You've thrown out so many nuggets of tremendous knowledge. I know this is going to really impact anybody that's listening to this or watching this episode. So thank you so much for being on. We're going to obviously be sharing where you can receive go out and purchase these publications, these books, where to find you, how to book you as a speaker to come in and really just impact those that you're going to just share wisdom down to or to across the stage. But any final words or anything else you'd like to mention before we sign off?
Todd, I just want to say thank you for having me on. For all of your audience members who stuck with us for the last hour or so, Thanks for listening to me. And truly, if there's ever anything that I can do for any of you, please reach out and let me know.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being on I'm Going In. The survivor symbol means so much to me as a mass shooting survivor. I wear my survivor phoenix with pride. representing strength and resilience. It reminds us that even when we feel knocked down, we're not alone. Together, we can rise stronger. A portion of the profits will support other survivors needing help. Get yours today at toddblyleven.com.